and Regine for organizing this. These are just some of the ideas that are swirling around my head for my prospectus, and a lot of them have been informed by preliminary fieldwork that I've done in Karachi, both this summer for 2 months and this past winter for about 3 weeks. So what I'll do is, my original question was how do people access water in situations of rising precarity? This question came up as a result of my own experiences growing up in Karachi, and also seeing the city kind of get subsumed under larger discourses of urban water crises. So I'll talk about some of the political economy perspectives on water shortages and my case overview. I'll talk about some of my preliminary fieldwork, what I hope to accomplish in the future fieldwork, and how I anticipate this has larger contributions for stuff. So, in 2016, a Dawn newspaper report made the startling claim that water meant for Karachi was being redirected to Bahria Town, a sprawling upmarket gated community on the city's outskirts. This was a particularly noteworthy accusation, considering Pakistan's largest city of 24 million people is also claimed to be one of the most water-stressed in the world. Immortalized as a feral failed city by Pentagon officials, Karachi speaks to the concern policymakers, development experts, and academics have regarding the sorry state of urban life. Water shortages, like pollution, violence, and crime, are just various manifestations of the larger global urban crisis that is rendering cities unlivable. Marxist scholars argue this crisis is a historical consequence of the central place cities have come to occupy in processes of capital accumulation. Cities are increasingly competing to sell themselves as world-class centers for tourism, finance, land development, and urban opulence in general. Cities like Karachi, then, are considered gateways to the global economy that are able to make or break a country's national fortunes. It is this very intrusion of the market into city space, evidenced by gated communities, shopping malls, and other investment-friendly infrastructure that forces the urban crisis to materialize in its various forms. Water shortages, then, can be explained by the logic of the market, which disciplines cities to respond to the whims of global capital at the expense of the needs of its citizens. Karachi appears to fit this narrative perfectly, serving as the most likely case for much of the recent theorizing in political economy. On the one hand, it is the poster child for the urban crisis. Along with severe water shortages, the city also suffers from chronic crime, security threats, insufficient waste management, and massive traffic jams, to name just a few problems. But Karachi's economy is a powerhouse. Its $113 billion GDP contributes 20% to Pakistan's overall income. Karachi also contributes most in terms of tax revenue, that was 61.49% in 2015, and national employment, where figures range from 40 to 70%. These figures are projected to rise with mass rural to urban migration, and Pakistan's favorable picture of projected economic growth. Critics of economic liberalization thus might point to this disparity between living conditions and economic conditions to confront the harmful effects of neoliberalism. And yet, with respect to water access at least, Karachi presents an interesting puzzle. First, a historical perspective shows that Karachi's water troubles somewhat predate the economic liberalization that swept South Asia in the 1990s, and particularly Pakistan since the turn of the century. For example, the Greater Karachi Plan of 1950, developed by the Swedish planning firm Mers Rendel Vatten, for example, suggested the city's water supply was inadequate and predicted both rising demand and shrinking access for the future. This was reflected in the subsequent Karachi Development Plan of 1974, where policymakers urgently pointed to a developing crisis in which limited formal means of access, like piped water, were forcing the urban poor to seek out private water vendors. Indeed, the first record of a full-blown water crisis in post-colonial Karachi was reported between March and May of 1952. That's a cartoon from a newspaper article from that time. Archival sources like these somewhat trouble the narrative that Karachi's water shortages, like those in cities around the world, has suddenly emerged as part of a larger global urban crisis, itself brought on by the ethically bankrupt forces of late capitalism. More significantly, my preliminary fieldwork in Karachi did not sit well with theories of capital's so-called spatial fix, or the notion that capitalism marginalizes the urban poor by structuring space to overcome its inbuilt susceptibility to fail. While water access in municipal lines was certainly patchy and unpredictable in some middle to low income areas, it was entirely regular and predictable in others. Rather than built infrastructure discriminating against the urban poor, predictable access to municipal water seemed to vary with respect to social and political affiliation. My findings also didn't reflect some of the insights drawn from ethnographies of infrastructure, where centrally mandated and controlled pipes, grids, roads serve as technologies of government that leave local actors with little control over their material environments. My fieldwork was replete with stories where municipally supplied water was overtly controlled, seemingly for political gain. As Rajesh, a Karachi Water and Sewerage Board operator, said when I asked him about the last time he received line water, a few days before the elections, there was water coming in the lines 3 times a day. These are the same lines that have no water reportedly for 25 years. My fieldwork suggests that local actors have more control over infrastructure than has been suggested, at least at the level of everyday access, and that this control is colored by local politics of its own. In Karachi, the local state embodied by councillors, union council chairmen, water operators, and district commissioners work with party activists, local elders, and other community members to control municipal water at the level of everyday access. To explore this politics deeper, I aim to engage with the 2 themes that featured prominently in my fieldwork. The first is patronage. Unfortunately, any mention of patrons or clients seems to elicit a knee-jerk reaction from scholars who have relegated patronage to the conceptual dustbin of the 20th century. Perhaps this is because political science is yet to treat patronage as anything more than a value system that is diametrically opposed to democratic rule. However, interdisciplinary efforts have highlighted patronage as not only a political logic, but a complex ethical, social, and economic structure in South Asia. Building on these studies, my proposed research aims to describe and explain the logic of patronage in accessing and supplying public water, not as static anti-democratic structure, but as an intermittent, contingent, unpredictable practice that can both fail and succeed in making urban life more livable through things like increased water access. The second concept I wish to engage with is the idea of urban informality. Unlike patronage, urban informality is celebrated as a resistance to Western modes of life. Apni madad aap, or help yourself, a popular phrase I came across when asking people about their pipe connections, seems to validate this interpretation. However, though informality is a fixture of Karachi's waterscape, it is not always welcomed by citizens who want the state to work for them. I therefore prefer to use the term coping mechanisms in an effort to reflect that informality, for those engaged in it at least, is a difficult, time-consuming, precarious, random, and at times undesirable way of living. Secondly then, my proposed research aims to document the coping mechanisms Karachi citizens employ to access water and make life possible. My overall approach is informed by scholarship that sees South Asian local politics as a historical and cultural accretion of its own. Treating local processes more earnestly will reveal factors, both theoretical and empirical, that are often de-emphasized or altogether forgotten in the panic over global urban crises, where the global is foregrounded more than the local in local. Though we may fear an urban catastrophe that is coming for everyone, urban precarity is and has long been a part of life for many in the global north and south. My proposed research therefore aims to contribute a methodologically and theoretically more grounded perspective to urban precarity in the post-colonial state and beyond. This is not to discredit that the intrusion of market forces has substantially altered life, especially for those living at the ever-increasing physical, social, and economic margins of urban space. Rather, it is to reflect the sentiment behind the Pesh Chakrabarti's notion of history too. Capital's ability to simply steamroll more local processes is not absolute. It is these very local processes I aim to highlight by telling a story of Karachi's water boards. Thanks for listening. Any questions, comments? I'd be happy to.
Great.